Okay, geeks and geekettes, this is it. This is the
Man,
Batman panel in DC's Fandome. How excited are you, Cody?
this is it, boys. We are Talk Geekly once again, bringing the latest and the greatest from comic books to video games and much more from the geek culture. And we're going to be covering the Batman panel. And this looks phenomenal. I think we're going to get some leakage on the new Batman movie.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a trailer. I know a lot of you are definitely hoping for one as well. This has been a good day, man. DC they put together a really, really nice event for the fans.
I'm very anxious to get back to work and continue to form this beloved character. I've always been a massive fan. I'm not really allowed to.
So it's going to be a trial by fire for Robert Pattinson, that's for sure. A lot of people don't think he can pull this one off, but I'm going to give the guy some credit as what he's done in the past, and I think he's going to be a good Batman.
He can determine what can and can't be talked about. But I do know that if you stick around till the end, there's a cool surprise. So
Oh,
I hope you enjoy.
they're going to make us wait till the end.
Yeah,
Perfect.
It's kind of been the thing with all the panels today. They've kind of been saving most of the good, juicy stuff for the end of the panel. A lot of Q&A stuff for most of the panels today. But like I said, a really cool event.
I think what's exciting about where we are with DC and with this franchise specifically is that there's been a multiverse of Batman, right? And now you're taking over this particular iteration of Batman. What made you want to tell a Batman story? I mean, this is a heavy lift. What was it that drew you to this character in this world?
Look, I love Batman, and I've loved Batman since I was
One
a
of the
kid.
earlier panels today, Cody, you didn't get a chance to check it out, but it was really cool. They really started talking about that multiverse and, you know, explaining how they're going to really take advantage of that as far as the Flash movie's concerned. So they were talking about the different Batman that we're going to see. And I mean, the idea of what they got going for the multiverse, I think, can rival the MCU. What are your thoughts on that?
So, yeah, it's going to be something we're going to, save, I think, for the podcast, but, like, the new Batman that just got announced in the Flash movie, that kind of shook me by surprise. You guys have to stay tuned for that one, but that was I was surprised. So I think if they're going to tie it in like that, it's going to finally make sense, and it's going to finally be something where the DC cinematic can maybe start to strike back.
So far from being perfect, and watch us sort of see him becoming what we all know about him and see it in new ways.
So one thing I did hear is it seems that this is more of a year 2 Batman story, so not necessarily a year 1 that a lot of people were hoping for, but it's still very early in his Batman career, as we already have known for a while. But I think making it just 1 year later allows him to still tap into some of the content from year 1.
Yeah, and to be honest, we've seen year 1 a couple times, you know. You can only do so much with the year 1 story. So maybe giving it that, year 2 feeling and atmosphere can bring us some new potential.
He's trying to figure out sort of what he can do that can finally change this place. And in our story, as he's in that mode, that's where you meet him and you see that he is charting what he's doing, and he's seeing that he's not having any of the effect that he wants to have yet. And that is when the murders start to happen, and then the murders begin to describe sort of the history of Gotham in a way that only reinforces what he knows about Gotham, but it opens up a whole new world of corruption that went much farther. But as that story starts to come out, without being an origin tale for him, it ends up being something that touches on his origin.
I like that he made it clear right there where he said it's without being an origin tale. One of the biggest things I notice all the time online is the meme that has become the idea that we've seen Batman's origin way too many times on the big screen. It's like, how many times can you see Martha and Thomas Wayne get gunned down in the alley? You know what I mean?
Personal for him, even though it is the story in which he's trying to understand and unravel this mystery.
It's so layered. I'm really excited about it. Speaking of what we know about Gotham, you've revealed some of the characters in this story, and the casting is just extraordinary.
They're amazing. I mean, we have,
All right, so here we go.
A version of the Riddler that no one has ever seen before, and it's really exciting. He's such an incredibly
Okay, I had no
creative
idea that they were
actor,
bringing the
and so
Riddler into
what
this, so
he
this will
is
be
doing,
cool.
I think is going to blow people's minds, and then to have Zoe Kravitz, her iteration of Selena Kyle, like to
That'll
me,
be cool
that's
too.
Incredibly exciting. You have an iteration that you've never seen of what she's doing, but it touches on all these kind of iconic sort of things that people know from the comics. So it's always about trying to square what you sort of know with what also is new, and that is really part of, I think, the exciting sort of process of making a Batman movie, which is to find a way to make it your own and to find a way for the actors to make it their own, and yet still connect to all these things that people also go, oh, that's my Selena. I know who that is. And I guess the one thing about the Rogues Gallery is that it actually, in a weird way, is the origins of a lot of our Rogues Gallery characters. So, like, Selena isn't Catwoman yet. That's actually part of the journey. Oz is not yet the Kingpin that he's going to become. He's the Penguin. In fact, doesn't like being called the Penguin. And the Riddler is just emerging for the first time. So that's all.
That
really
is a
exciting.
really
Have,
cool
like,
concept
to
right
have
there.
Andy Serkis, who is, I work with on the Apes movies, is one of the most.
Sounds like they
beautiful
might have
actors,
gotten a
and
little
he
bit of
is
their
like an iteration
inspiration
that I feel
from
people
the
have never seen
Gotham
before, which is
TV
really exciting to
series.
share with people.
But I
And we
like
have,
how
an
he
incredible-
definitely looks
for me,
excited
I
and
just think
passionate
that Jeffrey Wright is
about
just one
this
of the great
film, and I
actors.
think
To
that's
be
super
able to
important for a
work
director.
with
If they're
him
not
in a totally new
fully
iteration of
invested into
Gordon,
what they're
and then we have,
delivering,
the amazing
it's
John
definitely going to fall
Turturro,
flat.
who's gonna be a
I
Carmine
agree.
Falcone, who again, I think in this iteration, you've never seen that version before. And how all these characters connect, I think, for me, was one of the challenges but also exciting things about the creation of the story, which is that in going on this sort of desire to solve, or the urge and the compulsion to solve this series of crimes, you touch on all of these iterations of the beginnings of these characters, so that the whole movie is like, it's like a snowball rolling. You can just feel the momentum building and building, and that's
Yeah, he's definitely getting
It's exciting
hyped.
to
Yeah,
talk to
he
you
for
in the
sure.
middle
You
of
could tell
making
he
this,
loves it.
This incredibly rich undertaking, and you're an incredibly busy man. Not just this film. It's just announced that you're going to be working on the Gotham PD series. You're developing with writer Terrence Winter. How are these two projects going to dovetail? How are the series and the film's worlds going to overlap or connect?
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, the idea of this story was a story in which Gotham, which has this sort of depth of corruption, and then the idea that we could actually do a series that is going deeper into.
Okay,
an
so have
aspect
you
of it,
heard
which
of
in this
Gotham
case
PD
is
being
the
a series? This is the
police
first I'm
department,
hearing of
working
this.
with
Yeah,
the
yeah, I really
city.
haven't
And
heard
the
much,
way we're gonna
too
do
much
the
about it,
series, which is,
honestly.
incredible. I mean, Terrence Winter is just like an incredible writer. So the
I
idea
think
that
if they,
we got
as
him
long
to
as
do
they
this, I
have
mean,
Bullock,
this
they'll be all right.
is literally a dream.
You
And
can't do a
the
Gotham
idea
PD
is you go
series
back to year
without
one,
Bullock.
And year one is the beginning of the emergence. It's the first appearance of this masked vigilante that starts to unsettle the city, and you start to see the story through the point of view of these corrupt cops, and one in particular. And the story is actually a battle for his soul. And he's a cop over generations, and the history of corruption in Gotham is enormous and goes back many years. And the story is like, as you realize that there's this myth building in the background, you're actually in a new place where you've never seen these characters before, some of which we'll touch on that you may have seen from the comics, but others totally new. Then you can go down an avenue and go into detail that you couldn't do in a movie, and to go into these sort of
That's pretty
places
cool how
and
they're
make
gonna go,
entirely new
coincide with
characters
each other.
that Terrence is going to create. I'm incredibly excited about it.
That's awesome. I mean, like I said, just dimensional.
It sounds to me like they're gonna do what Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to do, but never actually
As you know,
delivered
Matt,
on.
Here in the DC fandom, it's not just a celebration of all the superheroes and the villains that we love, but most importantly, it's a celebration of the fans. So we have some questions for you straight from the fanverse, okay?
Okay, cool.
here
Okay,
we
that should
go.
be interesting.
This question comes from Arvin in the UAE, and he asks, when it comes to costume design and the collaboration processes behind it, to what extent were stars able to implement their own influence within the design?
That's a good question. Actually quite a bit. I mean, we have, of course, an incredible costume designer, Jacqueline Duran, and the Batsuit was designed by Glyn Dillon, and they're geniuses. I mean, it's great to work with them, but one of the things that's really important is being able to work with the actors. Like Rob had a very important part in designing the suit, in that he had to be able to wear it, he had to be able to fight in it. And one of the things about this Batsuit is that it's very practical. The whole idea is that he's made it himself, and so we needed to be able to sort of see how it would fit on him in these ways that he could move, but also looked like it was something that was still evolving. And even the idea of the story, he's in year 2, so he's been wearing it. So like, he goes every night looking for trouble. So you look at his cowl and you can actually see there are gashes in it, and all of that detail was an
So it's a good explanation as to how kind of janky the suit looks, you know? Because I mean, first impressions when you see that suit, it's not that impressive, you know?
So that we can arrive at the thing that
but it definitely makes
the
sense.
most grounded, the most honest, and the most character-based.
I'm just hoping everybody got pockets.
You know what? I will tell you this. One of the big things that Rob actually talked to Christian Bale, and Christian Bale was like, just make sure you're going to be able to relieve yourself. So all of that sort of was actually part of what was important to build into, which is like, okay, he needs to be able to put it on. He also needs to be able to live as a human being.
Okay, here's a video question from Pedro in Brazil.
Hi, I'm Pedro from Brazil, and I believe that one of the most important things about the whole Batman mythology is not just the characters such as Batman or the Joker, it's Gotham City itself. So I wanted to ask you, what should we fans expect to see from Gotham City in this film? Thank you.
You're absolutely right. Like, it's just as important as any of the Rogues Gallery. It's sort of like the nature of what this place is and the history of it is critically important.
That's the key word right there. The history of Gotham, like, it's so rich. It's such an important place in the DC universe.
I wanted to present it in a way that was really fleshed out. I wanted it to feel like an American city you'd never been to. I mean, other iterations have, you know, obviously the Burton one had very, very theatrical, beautiful, beautiful sets. And Nolan had the version that he created in Batman Begins, and that was a particular thing. And then parts of Chicago and parts of Pittsburgh. And what we're trying to do is create a version of it that you haven't seen before. So some of the locations that we've chosen, the idea
So
is
a newer take on Gotham,
like
too.
We have like a Gotham Square. So that's like Times Square, right? Now, if we shot it in Times Square, then you'd be like, I guess Gotham is New York. But in our case, it's actually going to be Liverpool. And the idea is to go to Liverpool where there's all the sort of the foundation of the Gothic architecture, and then add all of the more
Hey, that would actually be a
touches
really
of
cool
CG,
take
but
on
in
it.
a way that you're going to, when you see the movie, now that I've blown it, of course I've told you what it is, but you'll be like, hey, where's that city? Where did they shoot? And so the aspect of Gotham and realizing it has been, for me, one of the great pleasures in getting to mount the movie.
That's amazing. Evla from Germany says, it's already known that the movie is going to explore Bruce's second year as Batman. How do the citizens of Gotham perceive the vigilante?
Oh, that's a good question. Because it's still early and because he is a vigilante, which means he takes the law into his own hands. I mean, if you were in a city and there was a guy who dressed up as a bat and showed up out of the shadows and sometimes confronted those people and beat them up because he felt what they were doing was wrong, so that he could sort of put the fear of God in them about the crimes that they're committing, I think we would wonder, well, gee, that guy sounds a little dangerous. He's not yet the vision of the character that he becomes, where he becomes a symbol of hope for the city. He's earlier in the trajectory, and so they're afraid of him, frankly. He's kind of a growing legend. I think there are some people who are wondering, does he exist? How exactly does he exist? And that legend is building day by day and has been since he made his first appearance about 1.5 years ago as we were in year 2. So yeah, the public is afraid of him. I mean, that's one of the things I think that he...
I wonder what type of recap they're going to give us for year 1, because I would imagine, I don't know, maybe they do skip over year 1, but I wonder what sort of flashback they're going to do.
You know, I wouldn't doubt we get some kind of montage probably. It'd be really nice if they do give us at least a little taste of that dinner party. I think the dinner party scene, as far as year 1 is concerned, is probably one of the most pivotal moments in that arc.
Has been incredible. Like a friend of mine made a movie called Lost City of Z, and Rob appeared in that movie, and I was like, who is that guy? He had just such charisma, and Rob in the movie has this incredible beard, and you're like, who is that? And it's Rob. And Rob in The Rover, and Rob in Good Time. He is like a chameleon, and he's just such a gifted actor, and he's been working on his craft in this really incredible way. And he also happens to be a tremendous, passionate sort of fan of Batman the way that I am. And so it was an incredible...
He did not seem that hype during his interview.
Not
nearly as hype as this guy.
Yeah, that little intro, I mean, but I think at the same time, maybe he was trying to play up how he's going to play Bruce. You know, maybe he was tapping into that brooding, I'm Batman.
How long did it take to build the Batsuit?
Or he was just tired. They might have woke him up, with the crack of dawn to film that little segue.
You know, it's funny. It's like stepping into your childhood in a certain way, because you know, obviously the first thing you have to do is you have to craft a story that you think is worthy of the character. But then once you've done that and it becomes like, oh yeah, we're making this movie, one of the things you have to do is you have to design a Batsuit. You have to design a Batmobile. You have to have a Batcave. You have to have Batbikes, all of the things that he's going to have. And so, you know, for me, that's been one of the exciting things. And that happened even before we were quite done with the last iteration of the script. You know, we'd already gone through passes and it was quite clear what the vision of the world was being. While I'm writing, I actually already have a production designer on. And so he would be sending, as I'm writing scenes, I might send stuff to James, and he's like, "Oh, well, what about this for a Batcave?" And so, yes,
you know, as we're watching this, I think what's really cool throughout this event today, a lot of these movie panels, not one of the panels was the same. Every single one of these panels has been kind of set up in a different way. Where, you know, one we had, you know, interviews with the actors and things like that. They played games and that. Now we have the director who's like giving us a really good in-depth breakdown. And I think that's important that DC did that. They didn't keep like a similar format for each panel.
And that, of course, that part's a dream. I mean, you know,
you figure 24 hours of DC news, it could get a little boring if it's just the same format all the way through.
That's the incredible candy, right? Like the telling of a story is the hard work and trying to make sure that you're doing the right thing. And then when you get to dive into the idea of this car that, again, feels connected to this version of the character, a grounded version of the character, this is something that he built, and to try and look at those kind of rough seams and imagine how all that works, it's been an incredible sort of gift to be able to do that.
So did he basically just tell us that we're going to see a riveted hunk of junk Batmobile? Is that what you got?
I mean, that's what I'm vibing too.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think, you know, as we said, it's not.
It would make sense though, because he said he's not, you know, it's year 2, so he's still becoming who he needs to be as Batman.
He probably hasn't even met Lucius Fox yet.
I was really drawn to the fact that he said a lot of these villains won't be the villains that we're used to, that we're going to be meeting them at their beginning stages. That's really cool too, I think.
And I think for me what was exciting was not doing that, not doing the origin, not doing what we'd seen done so beautifully in other movies, but instead to meet him in the middle of this criminological experiment, to see him in the becoming of Batman, and to see him make mistakes as Batman, and to see him grow and fail and be heroic, do all of the things that we associate with Batman, but in a way that felt very human and very flawed. The biggest fantasy, of course, as a kid would have been to be Batman. And so the idea of putting the audience in the shoes of that character and make the audience feel the way that he feels, I think that, to me, I hope is what's different about what we're doing, is to try and do it in exactly that sort of manner. And then, of course, the other things that are from the earlier history of the comics, like him being the world's greatest detective and how he got there. You know, those things have been touched on, but I don't know that they've been as central to the plot as they are in this particular Batman. So there's a lot of things I hope.
That's cool.
So yes, yeah. If we get a lot more of a detective Batman, I think that's going to be freaking awesome.
Surprised to see has inspired the Batman.
You know, for me, because I wanted to get into the mindset of the character and I wanted to think of the psychology, for me, I think one of the cool deep dive ones was Darwin Cook's ego. He's confronting the beast that is Batman, and it's kind of, there's a kind of duality. I mean, there's a lot in what, you know, I was trying to do in the story about him confronting the shadow side of himself. The degree to which you have self-knowledge, you're able to understand your motivations, but he's broken, Batman. So while he's doing all of these things for the reasons that he thinks is right and that have a heroic sort of grounding in them, there's also many things that are driven by the parts of himself he doesn't yet know. And so I would say that that kind of sort of psychological Jungian shadow side, that sort of version of it is very much connected to that vision from Darwin Cook, from Ego.
Yosef from Bolivia says, which non-Batman movie were Matt Reeves, yours, inspiration for the Batman?
Oh, well, because the movie is a detective story, because it is a, you know, a thriller in the sort of cop world, and because it's about corruption, we're treating this Batman story as if this could have happened. I mean, the idea is that, as I said, Batman doesn't have this sort of the ability to have sort of super heroic powers. He just has super heroic focus and super heroic drive. And so for me, you know, a lot of movies like Chinatown was a key one, because Chinatown, Jake Gittes
See, I really hope that they don't get too inspired by things that aren't necessarily in the realm of superheroes. As much as Joker was a good film, I feel like that film was just not necessarily a comic book film. For some people, that's a good thing. For some
Absolutely,
other
yeah.
people, it's a bad thing. But I don't want that to happen with a Batman. Don't make a Batman movie that loses that comic book edge.
But who's to say? Maybe at some point that Joker movie sets the tone to become more of a comic-based movie. Maybe the second one we get introduces more of a comic sense in it. Because can you imagine that type of Joker going up against Batman? That would be pretty wild.
I don't know. I think the Batman would break him in 2 seconds, honestly. That Joker doesn't seem like he'd stand a chance against the Batman.
Well, again, I mean, if it's like a year 2 Batman, that might be a little bit different.
True.
Oh, totally. I mean, for me, that's exciting. Like the idea of the history of Batman, like just the idea of the actors who have played Batman, like Adam West. When I was a kid, like Adam West, that was like when I was 5 and watching him as Batman, like that blew my mind. I wanted to be Batman so badly. And then I remember when I was a little bit older and then Keaton came onto the scene with the Burton movie, I was so excited they were going to do a theatrical version of that. And then the iterations that have followed, like so many incredible people. I mean, Bale was amazing. I mean, incredible. Everything that Chris Nolan was is astonishing. And I personally love Ben Affleck as Batman. I thought he was incredible. Like an iteration again that we hadn't seen.
You know, that's an unpopular opinion about Ben Affleck. If you tell people you think he was a good Batman, they look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
I'm in camp Ben Affleck. I think he was a good Batman, and I'm not a huge fan of him.
I felt the same way, honestly.
Is an incredible thing, and I do think that that's one of the things. It's kind of like the comics, you know. When you look at the comics, there are so many iterations of Batmans. There are so many different people's Batmans. There's Neil Adams' Batman. There's, you know, of course, there's Bob Kane and Bill Finger's Batman, and there's Frank Miller's Batman. There's so many Batmans, and so. To me, that's one of the joys of being in the kind of comic book world is to try and say, hey, what can we do to put our spin on this so that people can
I think that's what a large part of the population that really doesn't get involved too deep with comics don't realize that, like, even though their version of their superhero might be the one that they love, there might be multiple takes on that superhero. So the movie we might get might not fit what they perceived originally.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, 100% spot on. You know, there's just so many arcs, and a character like Batman, he's been around for 80 years. It's like he's gone through so many changes. They could tap into anything, and it's always going to be different.
You have to pinch yourself.
So, Matt, before we wrap up, I think that what
God.
really want is to get just even a tiny glimpse of what the film is going to look like.
Okay,
and,
here we go.
This is a fan experience. I'm hoping you brought us something we can show them.
It's Fandome.
So what is he going to hook us up with? Do we get a trailer, a full trailer, or do we get a teaser trailer?
Geeks and Geekettes, are you ready?
So there's so much. This is just scratching the surface, but there was
Oh God, dude! I worked all day for this little taste of paradise.
Incredibly excited to share.
You've earned it. You've earned it, bud.
Of our movie, and I hope you guys like it.
I can't stop fiddling with my legs right now. How excited I am. It's like, all right, I've been waiting for this. Here we go. No more lies.
From your secret friend. Who?
Beautiful song selection.
Haven't a clue. Let's play a game. Just me and you. Any of this mean anything to you?
I like the serious tone to
Becoming
this.
quite a celebrity. Why is he writing to you?
The Catwoman with a sniper rifle. It looks like Selina's playing a huge part in this.
The hell are you supposed to be?
I think he's a little angry.
I liked his voice. I like the Batmobile. I like this. I think I like this a lot. I like the crudeness of it. I like the very, very dark atmosphere I saw, dude. I think that logo, I think we're gonna see the Bat brand, like where he is branding people with the symbol.
You'll see.
2021.
Okay, so that was your first official reveal of the trailer. So let's stop there and let's take that in for a second, please. Thoughts? I mean, you were saying a bunch of stuff there towards the end, but give us a little more detail on how you're feeling right now about that.
So I am really digging. They're gonna give us, like, I'm hoping the origin of like what created the Riddler. It looked like we're seeing a really dark, demented start to the Riddler. I noticed Selina with a rifle at one point in time. I've read a decent part of Selina. I've never really known her to use a gun. I could be wrong in that aspect, but that was cool to see her like that. It was nice to see her in a crude outfit too. I think at one point we seen Bruce confront her, and she had the ski mask over the face. I'm wondering who the villain is that they gave a glimpse of it, and I didn't catch it. So I'd like to research into that because that was pretty interesting as well.
Yeah, I think the whole time I'm watching that, and you were touching on it the entire time as well, and it goes back to what the director said earlier in the panel when he talked about keeping the character grounded, and you were talking about how raw it looked and in the darkness to it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really think that this is the good direction. This trailer has promise, and whether it is the over-the-top comic book style, like I was talking about earlier, keeping the movie, in that realm, I don't know if we necessarily need that after watching this trailer. I think, like, if this is just a serious, toned down, it's got its action, it's got the characters that we love, but gives us that detective story that he was talking about, this is gonna be freaking awesome.
So I would like to say that Marvel pretty much coined the whole funny but serious, like, superhero take, if that makes sense. Like, where it's very serious, it's very real, but they always have that sense of humor in it. And I'd like to think Marvel kind of like coined that. DC, on the other hand, always try to be serious, but once they try to take the Marvel approach, like we've seen in like Shazam, for instance, I thought that's where DC was getting better. This seems like it's DC, what DC originally was trying to do, but finally achieving it.
I think you're right, dude. That's a really good way to look at that. Yep. They got to the point where it's like, okay, we can make a serious movie and still hit the target demographic and make the fans appreciate it. So I think,
no, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, do you have any other thoughts on this trailer?
I don't, but I do think it might be worthwhile for us to maybe touch base on this after a little bit more gets leaked out, and maybe we dedicate a good 5-10 minute video where we kind of just break things down more of a tea and just give more of prediction, I guess. I think a prediction video would actually be pretty cool.
No, I agree. That would be awesome. Sounds like some good content that we could bring to you guys. So I think we're going to end there. I mean, I'm sure there's more going on as far as the panel is concerned, but you guys can check that out for yourselves over at DCFandome.com. I am Pendragon here. Of course, I'm always joined by my friend and yours, the Gotham Night Job for Cody.
Yeah, we are Talk Geekly. Once again, bringing the latest and the greatest. You could check out some of the past DC Fandome events that Penn covered himself personally on our Facebook page. But as always, you could check us out on Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. To all the superheroes and metahumans that watched tonight, we'd like to give you a big thank you. And as always, guys,
keep it geekly.